Hello everyone, and welcome to the Talkonomics podcast. We're live again. Sorry for a little bit of break that we took, but we're back, and we're back with better and stronger guests. And hopefully you'll enjoy this episode. It's brought to you by Amazix, the global blockchain consultancy firm, and we're very happy to have over one of our friends, Jack Nikogosian. Hello and welcome. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Annie.
I'm very happy to have you over. We met in person in London on one of the events. Amazix worked with your project at some point, and we're still working together. So I really would like to introduce you, just few points about yourself, and then I'll give you the floor to you so you can tell more about the stuff that I'm missing. So you are award-winning Danish blockchain expert. You were also known as Bitcoin Jack because in 2015 you ended up managing paying only with Bitcoin for a whole month, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you're also the CEO of Aryze, a very exciting and very impressive project in the fintech space. So I'll leave you continue and give the things that I've missed out.
It's right that I started getting the nickname Bitcoin Jack quite early on. And I was working at a company here in Denmark called Coinify, and I was head of their innovation lab. So in those years, I got to build a bunch of cool proof of concepts and projects and all kinds of different stuff. And one of the marketing stunts that we pulled off was, could I live 1 month in Copenhagen only using Bitcoin? And that was, of course, before the times of the crypto debit cards and the easy swaps and all these things. So it was quite a challenge. And the goal was essentially to see if we could get shops to accept Bitcoin payments. That was
okay.
And we managed, and it was a fun stunt. We got some restaurants, some bars, a few different places. I think 7 different places signed up over the days. So we did a crypto pub crawl where we arranged one of the first Bitcoin pub crawls. So that was fun. But my years in Coinify were really interesting because I was running their innovation lab, and I got to work on many cool projects, from location-based payments to micropayments for online media to IoT devices paying to each other, all kinds of cool stuff. But the challenge remained that you needed some kind of smart money. Right? Back then, we only had Bitcoin, and then came Ethereum and so on. So we have different cryptocurrencies that we could use.
Yeah.
But I had this challenge understanding why we needed some kind of smart money. Why can't we just use our real money, the money that we already use for these cool features, right? Why is it essentially that money is analog and cryptocurrencies are digital? So instead of creating a new kind of smart money or using Bitcoin or Ethereum, we want to make dumb money smart. So instead of creating a new coin, a new payment token, a new kind of thing that people have to understand, we want to digitalize what people are already using. So in Denmark, for example, the Danish national currency is more than 95% digital. It is already a cryptocurrency. It is a digital currency protected by cryptography and math, essentially, right? So I thought, well, why can't we make something which is as agile as cryptocurrency, as Ethereum and Bitcoin, and like true programmable money, but as secure as government money, as secure as cash money? Because what I learned in the month living as Bitcoin Jack, well, Bitcoin goes up and down, and I would have been a very wealthy gentleman if I had kept all my money from back then, and rather than having the world's most expensive tattoo and one of the world's most expensive taxi rides. Of course, the price of Bitcoins goes up and down, and that was part of the experiment, trying to live off Bitcoin. But the volatility of the price makes it extremely difficult to use for traditional trade finance and traditional remittance payments and traditional saving accounts and just traditional banking.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you mentioned that, it took you a while to sort of convince merchants to accept Bitcoin. And I think volatility is a big part of it, because they don't really know they will calculate it with the exchange rate at the moment, but probably a few hours later or, a day later, it will be a completely different rate. So it's a bit risky for them who have been used to looking at the stable side of things. So yeah, I get it.
You have different, and then you had companies that payment processors where they took your crypto and then exchanged it into fiat. That required the merchant to accept kind of crypto payments on their website, and that is a weird demand to have for the shops, because there are so few people using cryptocurrencies, and the ones that are using Bitcoin, for example, for everyday purchases, they can just get one of the debit cards or make them exchange into fiat that the shop kind of wants. Because until a lot of people uses Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, you can't really create an ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
So if we had a magic wand and we could make everybody on planet Earth use Bitcoin or Ethereum overnight, then maybe we could see crypto or Bitcoin as a digital peer-to-peer currency. But the fact is, the real world out there operates using money and traditional financial tools. And these are not only highly regulated, but they're highly controlled and audited. So if we want to create, say, an e-dollar or e-euro or electronic krona or some kind of digital version of cash, which is what Aryze wants to do, we need to operate as a regulated financial institution, but we need to use technology that we see in the open source sphere. It's about bridging the gap that today exists. And Aryze will make, as I said before, we will make dumb money smart. Also said differently, that we're making a digital version of cash money. So e-dollars, e-euro, and so on. And like cash, it is fully backed and fully redeemable. And it is extremely secure, because cash is one of the most credit secure elements that we have. Cash is king. And as long as the central banks are holding it, it cannot go away. So we're building this full reserve banking model that works in the world of blockchain and in the world of crypto.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. But, I will need to challenge you here, because, I just can imagine all the opinions of Bitcoin maximalists and cryptocurrency advocates who are actually telling just the opposite, that just because there is so much control, and just because it's controlled by the government, that's the beauty of the Bitcoin, because it's beyond that, and it's completely sovereign. So it's a little bit of I see what you mean. It looks like you are bridging the gap of two extremes, because it feels like what you were saying and what usually the crypto libertarians are saying are two very opposite views. So can we dive into that kind of, try to understand whether highly controlled and regulated and under the control of the government, how much more secure that feels to you? Because many people claim that your money in the banks don't belong to you either, right? I had this interview with Gavin, who always tells that, and it feels like for many people that's exactly what attracts them to the security factor of it, that it's in the bank. So what's your views about this?
Well, you said a good thing right there yourself. You said that some people say that money in the bank doesn't belong to them, and I fully agree. When you have $100 in JP Morgan as a bank deposit, you have 100 IOUs from JP Morgan. This is not your money. This is now the bank's money. The bank operates in a way that they do lending activities, and they essentially borrow your money to other people who pays an interest, and the world works, right? This is how fractional reserve banking works. I fully acknowledge that there are challenges in this banking model. And I also acknowledge that the rise of cryptocurrencies have been so powerful because of these problems are so big and so vast. But if we take a step back and say, what's the cool thing about Bitcoin? Where it's peer-to-peer and it's a bearer instrument, meaning one Bitcoin is mine and I can give it to you for free or almost for free of charge, and now it's yours. It's not anybody else's, it's mine, and I choose to give it to you.
Yeah, and no one can shut down my Bitcoin account, so to say. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Also, everybody knowing, also, especially the maximalist, knows very well the challenges associated with Bitcoin, and maybe gathering the mining pools together into a centralized silo is not as impossible as we would like to think. But let's put that aside, and let's say that Bitcoin is the most secure thing in the whole wide world. Fantastic. There are two challenges with using smart money. A, is not regulated, right? That is the challenge that we can discuss back and forth. And B, it's that it is not linked to what people are already using. Look, I love cryptocurrencies, and I think that if you want to use Ethereum, you need Ether, and whatever you want to do on Solidity requires that. If you want to use Tron, or if you want to use Dash or EOS or Neo or whatever system appeals to you, fantastic, go do it. But in order for the average individual to enter these systems, they need to enter with what they have. And what they have is a credit card, a bank account, cash in their hand, or nothing. So how would you enter? So I was in a project where we installed a a Bitcoin wallet in a solar panel. You could donate Bitcoin to a QR code and it would turn on if there was like a top-up card. Really cool. But if my mom wanted to donate $10 to this solar panel, first she would have to use a debit card to get Bitcoin from a payment processor, wait until they choose to give it to her in her wallet, then pay the transaction fees for the solar panel to receive it. And then the recipient will exchange it into fiat currencies again, right? So we use Bitcoin as a really smart thing, but it's not at all useful for people who don't have it, like my mom. And you could say, well, why don't you get her salaries in Bitcoin? Then that will be the end of all. Yeah, but my mom is a teacher. You know, the one who pay her salary are the public, the state. So are you going to force the Danish government to go away from Danish krona? No, absolutely not. So I love the visionary aspects of cryptocurrency. I love what we can do with it. I'm a big fan of DAI and what Maker are doing. Also, the guys from Denmark started that. So I do have a passion for that agenda as well. But I think we're not talking about different things. We're talking about the same thing. We are creating digital version of cash so that it can link to all of these other kinds of smart money, or else the rocket is just flying and we're not following. So what we're doing is we're linking that and making sure that cash follows the same growth. Then in the future, if somebody makes a basket of currencies or a Libra or a Bitcoin 2.0 or whatever they do, it will essentially operate using the same language as digital cash does. Right now, money is controlled by the banks and the PSPs and the financial institutions. Cryptocurrencies are controlled by none. What we want to do is give people back the control over real money, creating a bearer instrument where when you have $100 dollars, you know that there are $100 with your name on it, not in some bank, but kept by the sovereign state that printed it, kept in the Fed. Now you can doubt the dollar. You can doubt if the dollar go up and down in value, but like cash, nobody can take your $100 away from you. It would not randomly become $90.
Yeah.
You know? So sorry for the very long.
No. Makes sense. Absolutely.
The mission is the same. I think the mission is the same, but the crypto hardcore anarchists are maybe just a decade too quick. Our mission is the same, but in order to get there, we need to get the IKEAs and the masks and the trade shifts and the Red Cross and the energy companies, Gazproms, all of these companies, the real world companies, the one with thousands of employees, they need to be onboarded first. And they're not going to use some blockchain because it has quick settlement times. That's not the real world.
Yeah, makes sense. I think the other element you mentioned, like, people already have bank accounts, people are already using money, fiat money. But I think what you're doing will also help people who actually don't have access to financial services and don't have bank accounts. Financial inclusion, how do you think blockchain can help that aspect? Because it feels like many projects are trying to solve this issue, and I haven't seen one that has actually really had a big impact in the thing, because it feels like such a complex problem and there are so many challenges into trying to solve that. So how are you going to go about this? Because I feel like your project is tackling that aspect of the finance as well.
It is. And the reason why, so financial exclusion has been on everybody's tongues since Bitcoin came out, and now everybody can use Bitcoin, right? So no entry barriers, low transaction fees, the entirety of the planet can use this smart system. But the fact is they can't really, because so let's take it a step back. Why are people excluded financially? Well, essentially, if you want to use Revolut or PayPal or Pleo or any of these payment apps, or if you want to get a bank account or somehow just a physical bank or a virtual bank, it doesn't matter. You need a bank to want you as a customer.
Yeah.
And the way that banks, they earn money, as I mentioned before, is by doing lending activities. So taking your money and borrowing it to other people. Now, if you don't have a lot of money to give, and it takes a lot of money to onboard you and register you and know
you
who
cost
you are,
them too much. Yeah.
You cost them too much. And it doesn't matter if you're using GrabPay in the Philippines or if you're using eDram in Armenia. All of these have backbones in the world of banking, meaning the money is in a bank somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why essentially the people around the world are financially excluded, right? But then came the world of crypto that says, well, you don't need a bank account. You can use this crypto coin called a Jack coin. It is so and so fast. It costs so and so much. You can trade it on this exchange, and it's a really cool piece of technology, right? Banking the unbanked is not just a technological issue. It is a social issue. It is an understanding and a cultural issue. It is a technological issue, but it is so much more than just creating a coin somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what so many companies over the last few years tried to do. We have a different mindset. We say these people need access to money. The way that they get access to digital money today is through banks, or as I just explained, through all these traditional systems. But what if we could tokenize money and then make it interoperable with different blockchains or different systems?
Mm-hmm.
So that when we look in Kenya or in the Philippines or in Armenia or Russia, if we look around the world, we can see what's there. And then we can actually create that interoperability link to what they're already using and what they prefer.
So one common platform for all these solutions. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think that every single country almost are going to have their own platform. Like around China, we would probably build on EOS or NEO for some reason. Doing some European project, we'll probably use some blockchain maybe that are preferred here. We don't need to convince everybody to enter our system. We need to make a digital version of their own sovereign currency and make it work in the systems that they prefer.
Mm-hmm.
So we're members of Aryze is members of the Filipino Fintech Association. So while we're looking into digitalizing the US dollar, we parallel with that, we're looking into currencies around Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And by the membership in the association, we know many of the fintechs and many of the apps and many of the different cool things that come out of that area. So our strategy is to say, how can we get a digital pesos, a digital version of their own currency, and what system do they prefer to use around Asia, around Southeast Asia?
Okay. Yeah. So you tailor it to the existing solutions and needs already there. So there is no additional friction for people to kind of, adjust and transition into something else and learn new ways of doing
We're
things.
essentially giving people a digital version of what they already have, and we're letting them move it on a platform which their government allows or their government prefers, so to speak, right? So in that way, we're not trying to create this new coin and then force every country in Africa to start using our coin.
Yeah.
No, there's too many rules associated with that. We had an in-depth conversation with the central bank governor of Kenya. And trust me, there are so many things that you cannot just do in Kenya. You need to operate in a highly legal manner if you as a foreigner wants to operate as a financial institution in Africa or in Kenya. And there's stuff you can do and cannot do with M-Pesa, their biggest solution that they use over there. And It's naive to think that you can just create a blockchain and a coin and call it aid coin and it will aid the world. No, it's not like that, because the world is under governance of somebody. So Aryze's strategy is to work with the NGOs that knows all of the medical clinics and knows all of the people on the ground, and have a dual KYC and dual onboarding process where maybe we don't know this Filipino employee, but maybe we know where he is employed. And if he's employed with a shipping company that knows us, and this shipping company can help in the onboarding process of 100,000 employees, or Red Cross can help onboarding 20,000 people who are associated with their medical clinics, for example. We have this dual onboarding process to actually give these people a solution, because none of the existing blockchains and crypto coins out there, have given it, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. So you mentioned onboarding, and it feels like, very often when we talk about mass adoption and, again, about Bitcoin or, any other cryptocurrency, part of the biggest barrier is actually the fact that everything is so complex and difficult to wrap your mind about it if you're just entering the space, right? And it doesn't really have anything in common whether you're an intelligent person or not. It's just very complex. It's not user friendly. Just getting on the exchange, just figuring things out, just buying the cryptocurrency as an entry point and figuring out all these wallets is quite complex, right? So I think part of that is the user experience, like lack of user experience side of it, and making it very simple and seamless. So in your onboarding process, have you addressed that issue?
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely. So cryptocurrencies in its core form are difficult to use. Both, let's say you have to handle private keys and key management and all that. That's one thing, but just getting access to an exchange, completing a KYC process and registering, I don't want to say it's complex, but it can be overwhelming, right? It's like it's a big thing to do. I think, and I hope what we're going to see is that many of the technologies within the sphere of blockchain and many of the actual coins that can give liquidity in certain smart contracts, they will happen behind the scenes. They will be used behind the scenes. I imagine that, there's eToro X, and they want to optimize their exchange, and they figure out, well, if we move it to the Stellar protocol, we can do this and this and that, and we can make permission clusters where businesses have their own business circles, and great, let's use Stellar for that, or yes, let's use a Ripple or something. So me as a user of eToro, or me as a user of any service, I shouldn't be forced or obligated to know or understand any kind of technology. I should be using the service which is offered. In the same way as a real estate agent or the government, for example, they shouldn't tell me how to digitalize my house, but if they did it and I could transfer ownership or transfer the deed of my property in a different way, which could, be more efficient, then I would use it. But I'm not going to learn cryptography. So I think it's about trying to use these technologies behind the scenes for where they make sense. With Aryze right now, we're looking at we need to create some kind of banking solution which is regulated and audited as a bank would be, or else we're never going to get a bank license. B, creating this interoperability link to third-party blockchains so that other kinds of code and other coding languages can be used on top of our stable coins, right?
User experience.
Yes, user experience. Basically, my point is everything has to be behind the scenes if there is any complexity in it. So in the case of reporting, when we have some reporting elements, we're looking into how can we use blockchain to validate the data is in fact truthful, so that auditors know that the data, how it came and whatnot. So in that scenario, maybe blockchain could make sense. But I think people need to go away from like blockchain being one thing that can save the whole world and it's an all-encompassing thing, and rather looking at blockchain as one tool in the toolbox with a lot of tools, and figuring out, does it make sense to use blockchain? So many times I said to people, look, my nickname is Bitcoin Jack, but I would tell you don't use Bitcoin for that. Like a lot of times.
It's actually good that you mentioned this. Like, I think about 2-3 days ago, I posted a video on LinkedIn about blockchain marketing, and I was kind of having this mini rant that your USP is not the blockchain. Don't really focus on blockchain when you're marketing your project, because blockchain is it's not your service and it's not your product. It's just the tech that you are using. Mm-hmm. So I guess what you said kind of is exactly in those lines. And if we revisit that, in your project, obviously blockchain plays a big role for obvious reasons, and it does make sense to use blockchain technology a lot in various elements of our project. But when you look at the end result and the benefits that the project brings, what would you say is the main thing that the project is making in like if you go back and track it to the end user and the changes it brings to the person's life?
I like to say that we're creating a way to transfer money by not transferring money. So we need to keep money still and then use technology to transfer ownership of money instead.
Okay.
So once this mission has been accomplished, not only have we created a way to transfer ownership without any major costs and without any waiting times, but we have done it in a way so that the end users can either use our app if they prefer, which is designed, with a lot of design thinking skills in mind and a lot of experiences from our Danish designers, and it's a very, very nice application. But it is also more intended for the developer communities, so that if a coder in the Philippines wants to use Solidity and Ethereum to make a game or something, and he just needs an e-pesos, a local version of his own currency. So that's where we come in. We in our core format, our app will help assist in remittance payments and cross-border payments, and our focus is on donations and transfers from NGOs. So me donating $25 to an NGO and the NGO spending this money, and me being able to see what they actually spend the money on. So having some kind of process for that. That in itself will be phenomenally beneficial for the people involved, both in terms of savings and waiting times, but also security. A lot of these people are in danger because they handle cash and banks. So we will lower transaction fees, and we will do it for the people who don't have a lot, because we have managed to do things the right way so that we can actually get agreements with some of these big NGOs and these established players. I'm happy to say that we've just signed a letter of intent with a really important partner, which covers many, many, many of these organizations, and they have memberships from many of these NGOs. So we will look into cases both from, just to mention a few, their memberships have Doctors Without Borders and Red Cross, and even the Danish Boy Scouts to the smaller end, right? So there is a reason why Aryze got so far, is because things like GDPR and the YATI regulative and all of these rules and regulations and auditing processes and all that, well, we did it. We looked into it and we did it the right way. We're not just four coders.
Which is quite rare. Yeah.
We're building a bank, not building a blockchain, and that's vastly different. If you want to build a financially regulated offering, it is not the same as building a piece of cool tech. It is a different process.
Absolutely. Just listening to your story, I'm just wondering, very often entrepreneurs kind of, come up with the idea of whatever they are building based on their personal experiences and personal stories and personal challenges. Here, I see like a more global idea behind it. Like, how did you come up with the project idea? How did you actually decide to make it?
I've always had a lot of different ideas. So in the end, I thought there must be a lot of people like me with a bunch of different ideas. And we need to give these people a digital dollar so that they can do all the cool stuff that I did for a few years using Bitcoin. It is not about creating all the solutions for everybody. It's about creating smart money so that people can finally create their own solutions. Like with WordPress or Wix, you can now make a website like at almost no effort. Well, in the future, maybe you can make a loyalty point app for your school, or a library payment app to rent books from your library, whatever people figure out in their own communities. But my passion in this is to see what kind of cool things will people create. Like they create location-based payments where you go to a concert and you pay more to stand up front or in the back. That'll be cool. Maybe they'll create something for their energy, for purchasing energy, or getting money back for energy surplus or stuff like that. Who knows? Maybe somebody will create that. Our job is just to create the digital version of cash, so there's no doubt about the money being there, and there's no doubt about what we can do with the money. Essentially, Aryze can't touch it. It's not ours. So once we created that, and it's audited and secure and safe, I want to see what people build. I could tell you about me sending money to Armenia. It's really expensive, and we usually give cash to people who fly. Meet up with my
that's
uncle.
true. I can attest to that. Yeah.
So all that is, of course, very like close to me in terms of remittance payments and cross-border payments. But it would be a lie saying that that's how I came into it. I came into this with, God, why can't I do this with money? Why do I need to use some token? Why this cool thing I just built with 4 guys? Why do we need to use Ethereum to do it? Why can't we just use Danish krona? It was kind of out of frustration for that. Like we needed a stable coin without risk, and we don't have a risk-free stable coin. We don't have it.
No.
Like
true. Yeah. So I mean, building a blockchain like tech startup, let's say, it has so many complex elements to it. It's not just building the tech, it also has, usually it's more expensive, so there is a lot of fundraising element into the whole thing, and then it's people's management, building the right team, and everything else that goes ahead, right? So in your journey, what has been the biggest and hardest part of building Aryze?
It has been challenging to adapt to changing circumstances, but I think that that's one of those things that many people have neglected to do in our ecosystem. You see many of the companies that came up who have just kind of stubbornly withheld their view on things. Like this is the way it has to be, and we know better. So telling yourself, well, maybe you don't know better, and maybe it's okay to do something differently. So we started our first fundraise doing an ICO, and when we started planning, Bitcoin had a price of $20,000, and when we started executing, Bitcoin had a price of $2,000. So we had to raise money in a pre-sale from people who had from contributors and people who had made commitments that they couldn't pay, right? So how do we handle that? Well, we pivoted, and we create an appeal that was more oriented to traditional investors and VCs and bigger angels, and we spent a lot of time on educating and speaking, one-to-one meetings, and it was a very intense process. And then parallel to that, we did instead of doing an ICO just kind of in the world of crypto, we did a much more regulated STO, which is almost as regulated as any financial instrument, so proper prospectus and all of the things in order.
It's almost the blockchain version of IPOs these days, right? The STOs.
Yes, and now we are actually the latest thing that has happened is that we have an equity element, so that the people who bought into our STO will also get some equity. Doing these restructurings and not just saying, no, we have a coin, it's the best in the world. Like adapting to the changes, I think is something that I would recommend that people in this space do. And I've learned over the last few years that building a bank like we're doing is not about just picking a blockchain and then saying, now we are an Ethereum-based bank. If you want to have a bank, you need a bank license. If you want a bank license, you need somebody to audit your technology and do technology assurance and making sure that you follow the ISO standards and the requirements. Like we are just now seeing cloud native banking or like a non-legacy banking. We're just now seeing these regulations come up. So if you want to build a bank, it cannot just be on a blockchain. And that's also something we learned early on, that we need to have some technology from the world of banking and some technology in the world of crypto and open source and using the tech that makes sense. Where in the early days, when I went to the Bitcoin meetups, well, we were all hyping each other up, like, oh, Ethereum will do this and we'll do that, and IOTA will do this, and we were like going nuts, like, imagine self-driving cars paying each other, like everybody were like freaking out, right, about the future possibilities of what we can do. But I don't want to make something in the future. I want to make something now. I want to make something next year, not in a decade.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I've heard very often that, all these legacy banks who are looking into blockchain, it's almost impossible for them to sort of integrate the whole thing because they have such a big structure of the things already in place that
it's different. I mean, they're in the same sphere of finance, but it's like a train and a car is two different things. I mean, they're both vehicles for mobility, right? That can both move people from A to B, but you can't get a car to drive on railroad tracks, and you can't get a train to drive on the road. So it's just, even though they're both within mobility, it is not the same beast. It is a vastly different thing.
So building from scratch.
Lending.
Building from scratch or just acquiring someone who has built it from scratch is probably a better option than just modifying the legacy banking.
It's no secret that some of the banking software that we will be using is banking software built by people who build banking software. And it's software that is in place and is tested and it's working and it's regulated and it follows the standards. So we can easily say to the regulators, like, this is our tech stack. This is what we're doing. This is how it works. This is how it worked last year. Like, so yeah, we're not reinventing some algorithm making it possible to do faster transactions. No, we're combining technology in a way that makes sense and operating in the cloud without the need for heavy machinery and legacy software. We're creating a microcluster architecture so that we can replace stuff that doesn't work with new stuff and like flip it around over the years to come. So we maintain some agility in our tech stack. So it's not about picking one now and then next year saying, oh, we made a wrong pick, now we have to move to Tron. Right? So it's more about creating a very complex structure where we can gradually adapt and remove and add on and whatnot.
Since we touched a little bit about entrepreneurship and the aspect of just building a startup, how big role do you think the personality of the founder and the CEO plays in this whole picture?
I don't know. I looked into the all of the crypto startups, who had the cool CEOs that you follow on Twitter and who you like, every time they put out a video, you're like, oh my God, this guy, they put out a video. Like, but if you look at them today, many of them are not like out there. They're not, they haven't done it, right? so if you look at a company who has done stuff, well, maybe it's not the ones with the coolest CEO. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of the CEOs spend too much time on going to conferences and talking and then pretending to be the know-it-alls. Me as a CEO, I'm very transparent. I mean, I know what I know, but Aryze is not me. Aryze is not mine. Aryze is a combination of the skills and talents that we have in the company. And, I'm not trying to be this all-knowing guru going everywhere preaching what I know. No, I do attend conferences and events that make sense for us to attend to. But I'm not like this all-knowing, wise young CEO who has it all cracked, like some of the CEOs try to pretend they are.
Yeah.
I'm not so much on Twitter. I'm not.
So you don't fake it until you make it, which is kind of a mantra among many of the CEOs these days.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to pull the blame game on everybody. I do follow many of the people I just talked about myself, but I'm not. I don't remember going on Twitter. I don't remember posting. I'm not like, oh, I better share this quote, or man, I'm smart. Why didn't anybody film it so I can put it online so everybody can know how smart I am? No, dude, if you're smart, go to work, and then in a few years' time, your product will be out there, and you will be on the cover
talking
of
for
Forbes.
you.
Like you will be acknowledged as being smart without you saying it. People will tell you you're smart if you're smart. You don't need to go tell yourself like.
Makes sense. Well, I guess that's the best time to wrap this up. So I do hope that Aryze actually succeeds and it makes it and you end up at the cover of Forbes magazine without doing all this tweeting stuff and without really being on all conferences out there and pretending that you know it all. So I think that's
Honestly,
kind of
a lot of them have been really good. A lot of them have been good, but I've read so much on many of the ICO riches that came over the last few years. Many of them have been spent on conferences. I guess I mean that's why I'm hating just a bit. I've been to some of them, but a CEO's job is not to travel the world and go to conferences. That's not what I think. It's to build cool stuff.
yeah, absolutely.
But Annie, thank
So
you for
good
everything.
luck with building the thing. I'm sure it will have a very big impact on so many lives. So I think it's something that is worth pursuing. And yeah, I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you so much, Annie. And I'm so happy for Amazix. I mean, you guys have been there since day one. So, of course, all the love to the team from Amazix.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.